So, yesterday we discussed pollination, fertilization, and germination with fruit tree, or not fruit trees, angiosperms and fruit. Today we're going to talk about gymnosperms because gymnosperms typically have their seeds in a what? In a cone. So, you guys already knew that one. Make sure you spell it right. Oh, go away, go away. It popped up something else, but I think she could still see. Jan here, for those who are. Now, I should have quizzed you on that one. Dang it. The most common types of gymnosperms are conifers. That is the largest group. We talked about this already, that pines have woody cones, like what's pictured right there. Junipers have softer, fleshier cones that actually look like berries. You would probably not consider that a cone, would you?
No, I'd probably eat it.
But it is. Don't try to eat it. It won't go well. Won't taste. No, I don't think so, but it won't taste good.
I've eaten.
Ugh.
I've eaten fish.
I just ate, dude. All right. Now, what you may not have known is that conifers do actually prefer both produce male and female cones frequently on the same tree. What you are used to seeing are actually the female cones. Hang on. Now, we learned yesterday the male part of the plant produces what? Pollen, okay? The female part of the plant has the what? That's where it gets, okay. The stigma, where the pollen lands to transfer the fertilization into the ovule, which is the seed. So, male cones tend to grow on the lower branches of the tree, and they're usually smaller and softer. Therefore, they don't last like the female cones do. And we already discussed this. The male cones are where you're going to get the pollen, and the pollen contains the sperm. She beat you to it. Yeah, we are.
You're gonna make me.
Now, this right here is why you don't. This right here is why you don't see the male cones typically, and why you all made that weird face when I showed you the picture. Because once the male cones lose their pollen, they just disintegrate. The female cones are the ones that stay. So, their job is done. As opposed to the other people who said they looked poisoned. The female cones tend to grow in the upper branches of the tree. And before they pollinate, the scales open just a little bit, obviously, so the pollen can get in there. So let's talk about the process of pollination. Now, I apologize because your picture and the order of pollination cannot be on the same page because of how this works, so my apologies. Step 1, once that pollen enters, the scales close up.
This isn't getting uncomfortable yet.
Okay. Then a pollen grain tube grows towards the egg. If you flip back over to the picture, you can see this. The sperm cell travels down the tube and fertilizes the egg, forming a zygote. What's a zygote? Oh, it's a word we learned yesterday. The word we learned yesterday. It's a fertilized egg. The zygote develops into a what? An embryo. There we go. And the ovule develops into the seed coat and food. A little bit different than the angiosperm, but for the most part, we're repeating what we learned yesterday with angiosperms. The cone grows larger. And then the scales open, the seeds are carried away by the wind, typically with cones, unlike flowers. And eventually, once the female's job is done, they will fall off the tree. But because they were woody, they will be the ones that you find on the ground. Okay, I'm waiting. Yeah. Huh? No. 8th grade's all earth science and space science. No reproduction. Oh, that's life science. Okay, so looking at this picture, we need to number these steps. Okay? So what did number 1 say? The scales close because what's happened? Pollen has entered. So here we've got pollen entering right here. Okay, so there's your number 1. Okay. What does number 2 say? Oh, so we've got, here's our little tube right here. So that's 2. I didn't. What does the sperm do? Step 3. What's step 3 say? Oh, so it fertilizes the egg. So there's step 3. What does step 4 say? Okay. That's happening right here. So that's step 4. That's the cell dividing. I don't know. That's the cell dividing. What does number 5 say? Okay, it doesn't show you a good picture of that. So what's number 6 say? Isn't there a part where, oh, never mind. So yeah, this is basically, you're not getting to see it up close, but this is 5 and 6 happening. And what's number 7? What's number 7 say? There you go. This right here is the seed. This is just a cone. Now, obviously, you guys know that then the seed would go through germination. It begins to sprout. It becomes the big tree, and the process repeats itself. Never-ending cycle. No. In a sense, seeds. The cone holds the seeds. Not the same thing. All right, so moving on. Now let's talk about spores. A spore is much smaller than a seed. It is only a single cell. It's very, very tiny. It does not have a stored food source. I have talked about with you guys, what's the food source for the seed called? Starts with a C. Total it on. There we go. You can even take this over into the animal kingdom. There is a food source for that baby chick inside that egg. What is it? The yolk. The yolk. The yolk is the food source for the baby chick. Yes. Not if it never got pregnant. I'm gonna rock y'all's world next year, and I'm getting super excited now. Yes. All you city folks. Nope. Shh. Yes, Trig. If you have chickens. Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh. Possibly.
And it's eating the eggs for their eggs.
Yeah.
How does it do that? So is there one minute first already?
If you have you ever cracked one open and seen a little bit of blood? Yes. Oh, that's gross. Ew. That's something that we're not even going to dive that deep in next year. It's a complicated question. The white stuff that's the stringy white stuff. It's basically just there to hold everything in place. That's the short answer. Oh, that's different, and we'll get there next year. All right. Now, because there is no food source stored in the spore producing plants usually need more water because those spores are going to need water ASAP or they will not germinate. The two most common spore producing plants are ferns and mosses. You thought I was going to say mushrooms, didn't you? Oh. Oh, but see, here's the thing. What's that word? Are mushrooms plants? No. So let's talk about ferns. Exactly. Vascular plants. We talked about this. What does vascular mean? Tube-like structures that do what? Carry water and nutrients. We learned that ferns have rhizomes, those underground stems.
Spores.
Those are the spores. Well, there's a clump of them together. So the spores develop in spore cases on the underneath sides of those fronds, because that's the cases for the spores. Yeah. Yeah, you could if you go look at the right time, you could flip a frond over and you might be able to see the spore cases. When spores are released, they are typically carried either by wind or by water. We talked about pollination with insects and animals, but that is not really the case with spores or with the seeds from cones. So, same thing here. You have the life cycle of a fern. The fern grows the spore cases, which release the spores. The spores fall onto the ground or into the water and begin to sprout. What are these called? I heard somebody say it. Fiddleheads or baby ferns. And those grow into the bigger ferns. And of course, the cycle continues. Now, mosses are a little bit different. Mosses have two stages of reproduction. They have small, fuzzy stem-like structures that grow and contain the male and female cells. You guys, yeah. Oh, I was pointing at the wrong thing. After fertilization, a slender stalk grows and produces the spores. You've probably never seen a moss that looked like that.
It doesn't look
Yeah, keep in mind mosses are small. It's obviously bigger for the picture. I don't know. I touched the board earlier and it like put that up there. I don't know what it did. Okay, now molds, yeasts, and mushrooms are not plants. They are fungi, but they do, yes, you eat a fungus. Whose phone? Gerber Collision is trying to call you, dear. So yes, I just heard it vibrating against the wall. Now, mold, yeast, and mushrooms, they are not plants, but they do use spores to reproduce. Most fungi produce what's called a fruiting body. Do not confuse this with angiosperms in their fruit. That's what it's called. That's what they call the structure that contains the spores. I don't know why. Okay, we've learned this. Do scientists come up with really weird stuff occasionally? Yes, they do. I'm a science teacher. Dang it. Oh, they left a voicemail. Apparently, they really want to get a hold of you. Now, each type of fungus up here, each type of fungus has a different type of fruiting body. The mushroom cap is the fruiting body for the mushroom. The molds will have small club-like structures that grow up. You can't really see those easily. Club, like a clunk, like Gerg, hit, stick, caveman thing. There you go. And yeasts have tiny sacs. Now, you all closed your packets before you saw the pictures. Okay. Obviously, this is a what? Mushroom. The spores are in those little slits. Next time you guys have mushrooms on your pizza, you can tell your parents, we're eating the fruiting bodies. You really bad. Yes. I don't think I can. All right. This is a microscope view of the fruiting bodies for molds. And this is a microscope view for yeast. You can see how there's like a little sac around the spores. It's a microscopic view of yeast. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I'm thinking. Oh, we do. We use yeast at some point this year. Not to make bread, unfortunately. Apparently. And somebody else agreed with him. All right. I have a video for you. Oh, no. Okay. Up here. Eyes up here. I know y'all are scared because of what we've been discussing. But this is not bad. Chill. This is basically
has been disseminated by different branches of human lineage.
I know.
Just as mushroom spores are spread on a cool breeze.
That's so you can see the mushroom spores.
So released into the air by the mushroom. is to reproduce to the best of its ability. The primitive strategy used by these bees consists of creating many countless possibilities for survival.
They lit it up so that you can see it. No, they put a light there. That's the spores.
Each of these reproductive cycles provides its own fortune.
Huh?
The root will grow in similar directions, but no two will alight on the exact same spot. The unique genetic code written on the chromosomes of each cannot be repeated. They may be quite similar or nearly identical, but some will triumph, and others, the vast majority, will not. Some will be breathed in by an animal, others will fall into the water, and almost none of the rest of them will find an appropriate place to land, and therefore will not survive. But with luck, one of these spores, perhaps just fractionally rounder or more aerodynamic than the others, will be able to fly underground air turbulence created by insects, or will be more capable of holding up thanks to this year's lower humidity levels. And when it lands in the perfect place with the ideal adaptations, it will grow and prosper where its siblings couldn't. At last, when it reaches the moment of reproduction, its own spores will incorporate those variations in its chromosome that its existence, and its improved design will have a tendency to perpetuate itself in low surface. This is the essence of the change in life, if only understood.
Whoa. Cora, turn around, girl. Okay. Listen. You are not going to have homework tonight, but you still have like 20 minutes of class. So I suggest you work on additional homework or vocab